Good morning and welcome to another edition of Spirit of the Valley. As is our habit, we always like to have people on that are full of spirit, for one thing, but have done some very interesting things. And I think a lot of you know Lisa Johnson. I get the feeling you are well known around the Valley through various, I think good, don't look worried. But Lisa has done a lot of interesting things, all basically community-oriented, local, civic, charitable, and one other thing that isn't totally civic and charitable, but we'll talk about that as well. But welcome. I'm glad you're here, and I'm really glad I ran into you on the internet, actually.
Yeah.
That Upper Valley, Vermont, New Hampshire website is a wonderful one.
Mm-hmm.
It just, so many different things get put out there and start these great long chains of...
Mm-hmm. The Upper Valley Facebook page?
Yes.
Is that it? Yes.
I love
right.
it. It's just amazing what kind of things get out there, and all of a sudden you have 30 people responding, and then you know you've put something out there that's interesting. You basically started, not with co-ops, but before that, farming.
Well, I grew up here in Canaan, so I'm an Upper Valley girl. I was born at Mary Hitchcock Hospital, the one that's now a parking lot.
Yeah.
So in any given room in the Upper Valley, I'm usually the only one who's from here, in a sense.
That's true.
And I'm very happy to have moved away a lot because it gave me such a great feeling about what to come back to. You know, I really, really love being in the Upper Valley.
Good.
And I'm at the point in my life where I don't think I'd even consider living anywhere else. But I have lived around in a lot of places, and I think the turning point in terms of your show and the energy of your show, the turning point for me in my life probably came when I first worked at an apple orchard in southern New Hampshire. There's a bunkhouse there, and there were 20 or 30 of us all picking apples for a 6-week apple picking season and living in that bunkhouse together.
Wow.
And it was vegetarian food, and we hired a cook, and there was a sauna and ponds to swim in, and you worked all day, and it felt as much probably like a kibbutz would ever feel, or a communal life would ever feel in the United States in a casual way.
And
you know,
we don't see them now.
Exactly, and that experience with those particular people who are still very dear to my heart. We get together once a year.
I was just going to ask you how you have to bond in those situations. You better get along.
Yeah, exactly. And so we, those people really changed my thinking in my life a lot. And after 6 weeks of eating vegetarian food, you know, so we're talking about grains and beans a lot, right? And baking bread and everything. I had a whole different take now on what those co-ops were. Like, I had, in college years, I had walked into the Upper Valley Food Co-op in White River Junction with my best friend, and I had no idea what I was looking at. I mean, there was a 5-gallon pail on the shelf, and it was filled with rice. And I thought, what are people doing with that? You throw it at a wedding? Like, what is that for? And then there'd be another one with a whole different kind of rice, and another one with a whole different kind of rice. And I thought, how many kinds of rice could there be? I thought there was
just one.
And I was in college, I didn't have any, the beans, the grains, like what's bulgur, what is couscous? I had no idea what any of this stuff was. And I whispered to my friend, all this food, and there's nothing to eat. I just couldn't understand what they were doing. Well, now after this experience at the apple orchard, you know, I came back to the Upper Valley Co-op, and I walked right in, and I knew what to do with most of that food because they had taught me.
So,
so I became a volunteer that day, the day I walked into the co-op.
Is that right?
I started to check out, and they said, are you a member? And I said, well, no, what's that? And they said, well, yeah. I said, okay, so I'll sign up to be a member. And they said, well, would you like to be a volunteer? And I said, yes. And I put my food back on the shelf, and I went and volunteered for 2 hours the first day I walked to the store.
You are easy. I like it.
It was meant to be, I think. You know.
I think when you react that quickly to something, it absolutely was.
Absolutely. Well, in fact, it goes on from there because I got my 20% discount that day at the register, and I came in 1 or 2 days later to get a snack, and I had been picking apples at a whole different orchard at this point, and I was covered in slug slime and mashed apples, and I had tractor grease. I was driving my own tractor, and I walked into the co-op, and I was a mess, and the manager said to me, are you interested in a job? And I said, you can't be serious. I am covered in slime. You can't be serious. And she said, I just have a feeling about
this. But that's what
one.
sold you.
Yeah, yeah. So I became a staff person within the first week of ever ending up those. So then I was there for over 10 years and became the manager, and had a great run of it. Actually.
Wow. That's amazing. People don't fall into things like that very often that you hear about.
Not too often. And in fact, I think at that point, co-ops, the managers of co-ops were usually the people who had just stuck around the longest.
Yep.
It wasn't like I'd been recruited for my skill.
They just kind of moved up.
Right. But I went to workshops, I went to classes, I did grad school while I was at the co-op, and I kept building professionally and personally, and that was great. It was a great experience. We in the 8 years that I ran Upper Valley Co-op as the manager, we increased sales 500% in 8 years, which was a very exciting ride. We took it from 300,000 to $1.5 million in that time, and I love that. I just like to keep moving.
Well, I knew about you when I met you. And for those of you who can't find work these days, get yourself covered up in slug slime and apple juice, and walk into some CEO, and they're going to say, "There's a worker." No, that's wonderful. It's wonderful on their part too.
Yeah,
it said
she
a lot
was
about
very
them,
insightful. Yes,
that she saw what kind of person you were, and that's what a co-op person is. Mm-hmm. But you just took it a little far. So you were with the co-ops, and then
I was with the co-op for about 10 and a half years.
Yeah.
And then I left, and I'd had all I could take of co-ops at that point. That was just like such an intense, we were almost all living and breathing together again. It was very intense, and it was great. And then I was done, and I kind of collapsed for a few months, and I actually made jewelry for 6 months, and I sold it on the streets of Hanover.
Oh, how fun.
6 or 8 or 9 months or something like that. I think actually from spring right through till Christmas, I sold jewelry, and that was a really fun, creative experiment too. It was great to do something small and manageable with my hands after
and it was
that big
more choices and what you were going to do with it too.
Exactly. Yeah. No one to tell me. There was no board. There were no.
And if you didn't want to go in there one day,
didn't go. Yeah.
But you had total charge of it.
Yeah. And of course I made no money at it at all.
No, I was going to say, it isn't probably
but it
the
was
most
fun.
lucrative thing.
Right.
But you also met a lot of people that way, too.
Right. And then someone I had known from the co-op world invited me to be the manager of the Concord Food Co-op. They were really struggling. I didn't really understand how badly until I got there, but I ran that co-op for a year and a half, and we... I mean, nobody who's there now would have any idea, but we pretty much, I would tell you we saved it from failing because it was going downhill. We were losing members, they were losing staff, they were losing sales. It was a disaster, but we really just kept it afloat, served the customers, turned it around, protected the staff, and kind of started building a real business. And I only did it for a year and a half, but driving from Canaan to Concord, that was quite the commute.
Yeah.
I don't really care to do that again.
No? So we know you don't want to go back to a city?
Yeah.
We don't? Okay.
But Upper Valley's the place for me.
But you could recognize what needed to be done, having been doing it.
And that was a thrill, too. It really felt like a really great project to take a co-op that had a good heart, and it had just had a rough little while there with what was going on, and so we just sort of got rid of that stuff and started over and moved forward. And now that co-op, I'm so proud of them. I feel like they're my kids.
Cool. You've got babies all over the place.
Yes, and they have no idea. There's only 2 people still working there who even remember that I was ever there. That's fine. But I walk in that store and I just beam with pride because they're just expanding again now. They've taken over the other part of their building, and they bought the building, and they're expanding right now, which is very, very cool to see.
So you took all the principles that had made your success here so enormous,
right? Exactly,
and just put them in place one by one, incrementally.
Yeah,
and you probably had to make some moves, personnel-wise and everything, to get the make sure you had
it was
the right
mostly
spirit.
the kids that didn't show up to work. It's like, okay, you know what? You can't come back.
Guess what? You're done.
You've lost your job now. Let's move on.
And that does happen.
Yeah, I mean, they just didn't know. No one had really managed.
Unless you've been involved with one, I don't think you can understand. I love the whole concept, but I think you have to be with it a little while to understand what it's about, and go to some meetings and.
And I think it really helped that I was an outsider. They didn't know me. I wasn't part of that community. They hadn't suffered with me. I wasn't a staff member who'd moved up. I came in from the outside, and I think to them I seemed like I knew what I was doing. And I was objective. We did this one really fun story was that Thanksgiving was coming, and I said, okay, in my mind, you judge a co-op success partly by how many turkeys you sell at Thanksgiving. So I said, so how many turkeys did you guys sell last year? And they said, 8.
Ooh.
And I said, well, that's crazy. We've got access to Vermont-grown, naturally raised turkeys. We're going to sell the heck out of these turkeys. But everybody said, no, it's this tiny store. We have no place to store turkeys. That when we get them, we can't hold on to them even for 24 hours. There's nowhere to put them. And I said, well, don't worry, we'll figure it out. We sold 90 turkeys. And the staff were in a panic because where are they going to go? Well, I said, you know, we're going to figure this out. Who do we know who has a refrigerated truck? And there was a local farmer who had a refrigerated truck, and we put it at 32 degrees. And we got the turkeys in, and we kept them in the parking lot, in the truck, and we got them walkie-talkies. And the cashier would, when you would come through and they'd say, oh, it's Judy, they'd look it up, okay, and you'd pay for it at the register, and then they'd say, okay, Adam, you know, the turkey for Judy needs to get, and they'd put it right in your car.
That's
and the staff after that thought, oh my gosh, we can do things. Like we
well,
can,
see, that's what it takes is a vision. And instead of we don't have room for that, let's find out how we can get room for that. It's the whole half full, half empty.
And I think they had some experiences where when they tried things, it hadn't been supported, you know, and so they were like a little bit like kind of abused dogs, you know. I mean, I really had to help them believe in themselves, and that was the thrill for me, I think, was seeing the staff start to believe in themselves.
And then it spreads to the community, and obviously community is behind every success a co-op has. I mean, the people that believe in it 100%.
Yeah, and I think they're growing like crazy now, which is really fun to see.
It's fun to see. I think it's fun to see how many can go into different kinds of communities, like one in Right River. I mean, a lot of people say that isn't. I don't know if that's the place for. I heard skepticism from some of the employees, and I thought, well, any community can be if it's introduced the right way.
Right.
And they all soon realized it was far better than what had preceded it, and it wasn't a big, huge expense over their budget. And from what I hear, it's doing fine.
Well, and the cooperative model, I think, is just such an important model for anyone to look at as an economic model. You know, people think that this started in the 70s with natural food co-ops, and it's over 160 years old. It's a very important model for people who are being given the short end of the stick. That if we own it and control it, then we actually get a say in how it's done. Now, if the economic crisis that just went down, if this was your neighbor that was pulling that stuff, they would never be able to do it. If you knew the people behind that and they were in a community, the community would never let them get away with that because your kids are in that school with those other parents' kids. You just wouldn't do.
It's family.
You wouldn't pull that stuff in a community that you pull on a global scale when you're anonymous.
Well, you know too many people. You don't misbehave in front of people who know you.
Exactly. Co-ops are an incredibly and in this country, I think co-ops are. Maybe looked at sometimes a little askance, like, okay, it's the hippie thing with the food sometimes, or it's the credit unions, and we don't really get what a credit union is. But the co-op model, I think, has so much room to grow in terms of service in this country. Like, so many things could be better if there were co-ops running them.
And I think what you said is true about the misconception of who is a co-op, hippie.
Right.
I mean, maybe it was at one point more that than anything else because of the communal beginning, but everybody I know goes there.
Well, and the Hanover Co-op, let me just say, because we're going to get to the part about me being a vendor in a minute, the Hanover Co-op, which is, it's really the co-op food stores of Hanover and Lebanon. So Hanover, Lebanon, White River Junction, and Lyme, right? All of those stores. That, you know, that is one of the World War II co-ops, and people in the Upper Valley don't always understand the difference here, but that co-op is, 70 years old now, and it's one of the only ones left in the country from that era, and it's because all those other co-ops didn't change and adjust and continue to serve the members the way the members needed to be served today, but our co-op did that, has done that every day and keeps doing that, and I'm talking about the Hanover co-op now as opposed to Upper Valley, but that one does. They both do it, and that's why these co-ops are thriving so much, is because they really listen to the members.
The input is asked for and appreciated and used, not just lip service.
Right.
Never more so obvious than when the whole service centers thing came up last year. And I went down to every meeting because I didn't want to lose it. It's the only one in the country that has one.
Right.
I use it for everything, and we went to meetings, and I had a lot of emails back and forth with board members and about my feelings about how keeping it is really important. And we got down there, and they had heard from a lot of people. And what we thought was going to end up being a fairly contentious meeting, because there were some real serious people that had done some serious screaming at board members earlier. They preempted us, not us, I would have said my piece, but by getting up and saying, before we start the meeting, we want you to know we're going to extend it for a year and study it better than we have before. And really see if we can hang on to it, because we know you want it.
And if this were a global corporation, the meeting would have been held in New Jersey in secret somewhere, and you wouldn't have even known. It would have been handed down, and that was
a statement out the next day, and done deal, move on.
Because Terry Appleby lives in Hanover,
exactly,
and we're in Norwich, and we all know who he is. We know his kids,
and their faces are all over the walls over there.
Exactly.
I mean, and you vote for them.
The staff, we know who these people are, and they want to be a member of a community.
Exactly.
And so
I was very impressed, and I wrote them after the meeting how impressive that was. Not only because of the way they handled, kind of taking the wind out of the sails of some people in there really ready for bear, but they didn't do it just politically. They did it because they wanted a meeting that was humane and civil. And it was just, it took everybody's breath away. And we almost had nothing left to say, except...
Because we're so not used to being listened to. That's the thing,
exactly.
right? In this world now, everything is so corporate-based that it's hard, it's just fast money zooming all over the place.
You have no clue who's running most things and where
they
are.
You were in the community long enough probably to remember the Purity Supreme thing down in 12A, right? So if anybody's listening who remembers this story, what was this, maybe 15 years ago now? Easily. It was a while ago. And these two supermarkets, right, and exactly how it went, I forget, but one bought the other one, right? And they said, okay, we'll keep the staff here who've worked here for decades, but we're going to get rid of all their benefits, cut their pay, and if the people running that food store lived in this community, there is no way that could have happened.
It wouldn't happen that way.
It would never have happened. And that's why co-ops are such a better model, because there's accountability. We have no accountability left in our economics. And
no, we don't.
Until we get back to that, we're all going to be suffering.
All we ever hear is blame, blame, blame. You don't ever hear who really actually deserves the consequence, if that's the word. So there's a nice shout out for co-ops, folks, because I think anyone who's involved in any of the ones around here are big believers and see the benefits. And I shop all kinds of places just for different reasons, but I'm always there too. Okay, so then you moved on to a wonderful organization called Vital Communities.
Yes.
And did you just hear of them, or did they hear of you, or...
Well,
did you walk in with your apple-covered slime? Or?
Different strategy this time. And this is where, for all job seekers, I would say, put the newspaper away and find the places that you love and go volunteer there and make yourself indispensable. I didn't quite do that with this job, but what I had done was when I forget at what point in my life, I guess because of my grad school work in community-based economic development, Vital Communities had years previously been working on a quality of life index. And I had been fascinated by that in my grad school years, so I volunteered just a little bit with that project. And so it happened, I wasn't doing it for this reason, but it happened that I got to meet Delia Clark, who was the executive director then and the founding executive director of Vital Communities. And so when I left the Concord Co-op and had a little while to recover from that. I have to recover after co-ops, I tell you. It's intense. I walked upstairs to Vital Communities, and I knew at this point, because I had been coached to believe this, I had doubted myself, but I had been coached to believe that I had done a good job, in my life. And so I had this sense that I could kind of work anywhere. I think my parents gave me that, like I believed that I could go do anything.
Good parents.
Good parents. And I walked upstairs with my resume, and there were wooden floors and windows, and some of them were open, and there was air, and there were rooms. It was like, it's an old train building that we were in at the time, and it felt like it didn't smell of plastic and cubicles and resentment. It didn't smell like resentment. Do you know what I mean?
The morale issue.
Yeah, and there were only 3 people working there or something, but it felt airy and sunny and light and like a place that my heart would resonate in, Nice. And And I decided, in fact, to turn in my resume because I knew this would be the place that I would want to be. And I was thrilled when she gave me the job there, when Delia gave me the job. And all I wanted to do was be the office manager. It was 20 hours a week. I could do it with my eyes closed. There were no weekends, no nights, no board meetings. I was just making copies and, mailing things. And it was the simplest job. I was so fried from driving to Concord and back.
You didn't want homework anymore.
I had nothing left physically in my body. Like I'd given myself away to the co-op, and I was young, so I didn't know how to not do that yet. And so I did. I just sort of healed in Vital Communities. It was something that would not violate all my values.
Good.
That was the point. I just needed a job that was 20 hours a week, wasn't too hard on my brain because there was no firing left happening, and something that didn't violate my values. And Vital Communities was such a fabulous place.
Well, they just do everything.
Oh my gosh, what a great place.
There isn't anything you couldn't go to them for, from what I can gather. And as you know, today's world is all, in our world anyway, it's local. And they just do whatever needs to be done.
Well, and it wasn't always that way. I mean, when I walked in, there were a couple of projects going on because it was a very small staff, and we all had the desire to really make an impact in the Upper Valley. But it was, it took time to sort of feel out how that would go. And so after about 6 months of making copies for people, I was breathing again, and I had the light back in my eyes, and I was kind of ready to go work on something. And we were working on a transportation project in the Upper Valley, really looking at what's important to people here about transportation, and not just taking sort of one side or the other, but really look at both sides, and or all questions around transportation. And then we started looking at housing. And I said, we better start looking at agriculture, because if we don't, the easiest place to build housing is on abandoned farmland.
Exactly.
And we also have said in this community that agriculture matters to us. So, and I knew that from the volunteering I had done years before. So I started the Valley Food and Farm program there. And that was a thrill. That was in 1999. And people said, well, what is it? And I said, well, we're going to build the local food system and support it and strengthen it. And they said, local food system. Do you mean trucks? What is that? What do you mean? Back then, even just, it was just 10 years ago. Nobody knew what you were talking about. And so we succeeded in making clear what that is, and we built the Flavors of the Valley, which is that annual tasting event. I'm sure you go to that, right?
Absolutely wonderful.
I tell you, I've never felt so wealthy as walking through that gym during Flavors of the Valley, because there's this incredible ingenuity all around you, and wisdom, and
energy. It's passion.
We've got clean air, clean soil, clean water. Like, we have got it so good here.
If every room could feel like that, every building could feel like that. We're getting down on time, and I want to talk about your latest thing, because we are not a promotional TV show, unless I decide I want to be. And Lisa has come up with a product made from one of the superfoods that we all should be eating in some form, and that's yams. Can you tell us a little bit about what's sitting here? Now, we're being very subtle about this. We get decorated our table, but we haven't
aren't these pretty decorations?
Isn't that pretty? Needs those flowers.
Well, I do. I love sweet potatoes, and I wanted my kids and us to eat more sweet potatoes, and I had this full-time job, and I just couldn't. I could not get them from the store to the drawer to the oven to the table in any kind of reasonable pattern. I just couldn't. I don't know. Maybe you can all do that. I just couldn't make that happen. And so I started making a bunch at once. And because of my years running food stores, it was clearly a specialty food waiting to happen. And nobody's doing this in the world. I've not seen anyone making dips out of sweet potatoes. I'm sure next week someone's going to start. But we're in our third year of Yummy Yammy, which is the name of my company.
Talk about a perfect name for a product.
It's the perfect name.
Yummy Yammy. You laugh at it, you giggle at it, but you also learn what it's about.
And we're in about 22 stores right now, including our first Whole Foods down in Hingham, Mass. And all the Whole Foods in Mass, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Maine now have access to my food if they choose to buy it. So if you're traveling and want to fill out a comment card, you go right ahead.
This could be huge. Whole Foods is no small thing.
It's no small thing. And there's a lot of independent stores in the Boston area too, so I'm really looking to build that relationship and get that out.
I think it's something that we all read about the superfoods, we all read about what we should be eating, and the little old sweet potato sometimes just gets forgotten.
Yeah, I think it's really dearly loved
Yeah.
and appreciated. People
But
value
don't know
it,
what to do
but
with it.
it's hard to get it into your day. You can't walk
Exactly.
around with a yam in
No.
your hand. So I just want to make it easier for busy people to eat better, and right now that takes place by delightfully bringing sweet potatoes to the
Well,
nation.
I'm telling you, the dips, and people use them for other things.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah,
they spread
dip
them on
spreads,
things,
right.
they,
Put them on sushi, on
but there
sandwiches
are
and wraps. Yeah.
multiple uses. They're fabulous. I haven't tried every one yet, but they're fabulous. And
Thank you.
I'm not going to be any more promotional than that. But I am going to.
It's a lot of fun, and keeping. Oh, go ahead.
Go no! I just really want them to be seen because I know
Thank
most
you.
people. I know about them, but
Right.
not everybody does.
Yeah.
And there may be one person out there that has never heard of them.
And I would say that the cool thing for me too is because I am a community member, I get to have Yummy Yummy be a part of the community.
Exactly.
You know, so my daughter, who was 4 at the time, made the drawing that goes on the T-shirts and on the business cards and on the. You know, both daughters have made art for the business. I've brought yams into the 4th grade class, hot sweet potatoes with fixins. We've given food, to, of course, to the Haven
Yeah.
and to Willing Hands and everybody, and it's a lot of fun. Like and we're part of the PTO. We're a corporate sponsor of the PTO, so I get a chance to say in the newsletter who we are. But it supports all the PTO activities at the school that my kids
what
go
a
to.
wonderful way to
So
do
I
it.
just like knowing that we can
you're
be an
giving
interactive
back.
part.
You're not just another crass commercial person in this world,
Yeah.
as I think I referred to it. You're doing something good and you're doing something businesslike, but you're also giving back and you're sharing it and not just, trying to get to be a millionaire. off of
Yeah,
it.
we're not quite at the
You're
millionaire
not quite
phase
there yet.
yet.
Let me know. I'll have you back.
Yeah, right.
But it is something worth trying, just because this show also, I can say this, because this show deals a lot with wellness and everything under it, and it's a very healthy food. If you get a choice between French fries and sweet potato fries, there shouldn't be any thinking involved. But to have it in a form that kids who like to stick little carrots and celery into things, they would like it that way.
Right.
And I have a couple coming up next week who I intend to test for you.
Oh, cool.
So anyway, we've covered a life of all giving and some getting, I hope. But this is the kind of person that I like to see this show wrap itself around, because Lisa has given back all her life in terms of the co-op and getting those things started. We all know how smart, healthy, and beneficial they are to the communities. But she's also gaining something now by getting something she's passionate about and getting it out there, and really out there. If Whole Foods has it, it's out there. And then just letting it, but see what happens with it. And she's taken a gamble with it in some sense.
Yes.
I mean, everything you
In a
do
very
like
real
this is a
sense.
real sense. Everything new you try to sell is a gamble. But I just
Because
think,
always before, when I was being an entrepreneur, it was with someone else's money.
Yes.
And now it's not with
This
someone
is
else's
all
money.
about you now, lady.
It's basically taking every dime you've got, every piggy bank you've got,
that's right.
and you can bring
so,
it to the bank.
help out this poor woman. We're going to whine. No, I just think it's valuable, and I think it's wonderful that you're gaining something from it. But
Thank
you've worked toward it, and you've earned it. And if this pays off, you have earned it.
And I feel, too, if I may just say
yeah.
that the community, by giving me a chance to run the co-op
Yeah.
as a trusted servant of the community,
Right.
that gave me such a basis to be able to do this. And so I feel so grateful for those years as a farm worker, as a community member,
Yeah.
as a waitress, all the ways, all
But
the
it
jobs
gave
I
you
ever had.
tremendous credibility with everyone you now want to place it with.
I guess,
mean,
yes, that's
they know
also
you.
true, right.
They know it wouldn't be a bad product.
Right.
They know you're doing it for the wellness and benefit of everyone who tries it and gets hooked on it. So you've lived a wonderfully interesting giving life.
And I'm not
and
even
you're not
50
even
yet.
50.
I've got a
God,
whole other half
God.
a life to go.
Oh, she can do twice as many things by the time she's my age.
I can't wait.
I hope I'm around to see your next incarnation. Anyway, this, ladies and gentlemen, is why I do what I do. This is just a classic case of the spirit that is in this valley, and I hope we'll get you back sometime to see how all of this is working when it's out there in the big world, and not just the only community we love and so much. So, Lisa, thank you.
Thank
I really
you. It's
appreciate
fun
you
to talk
coming
with
in.
you.
That's it. These are fast half hours, folks. Our website is catv.org, and you can get up there, and as soon as this tape gets taken care of and edited and such. It'll be up on that under Vimeo, which is the new way of doing videos now, and ours are all in one alphabetical category so that you can see every show we've done. But I'll also, on Facebook every day, I put what shows are coming on that day and when and who they are and who they involve and da-da-da. And so you will get good notice, and then you put it on your Facebook pages, please. And do you have a website?
Of course,
All right.
yummyyammy.com.
Yummyyammy.com. You can't even forget it. So our website's up there. Your website it'll be on the screen.
Oh, great.
And any way they can reach you, they should. But any questions, ask either one of us, and we will answer you immediately. So thank you, and thank you for watching. And tell your friends, and I'll let you know when we're going to air. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.